Dear President Daskalopoulos, distinguished guests, deans, colleagues and students, I would like to welcome you all to Business Week. Business Week is organized annually by the School of Business student academic societies, alphabetically, the Accounting and Finance, the Computer Information Society, Information System Society, the International Business and European Affairs, the Hospitality Society, the Management Society, and the Marketing Society. As you see, I'm going to spend 5 minutes describing our school, presenting to our guests our school. Academic societies work with the teaching staff to promote our school's academic standards. Business Week is the result of intensive collaboration between the academic and student community, focusing on subjects which currently affect the business world. I want to thank for their excellent work Dr. Eliana Christodoulou, this year's chair of the Business Week Faculty Steering Committee, Dr. Visvisi, I do not know where they are, but they're sitting, Professor Joanna Costantino, and Dr. Stelios Kortsias. They have modeled leadership in their work with students on this event. This is a very important time for the School of Business. All 12 specializations which were validated by the Open University last year have been implemented and are offering students dynamic, very dynamic areas to follow. We are the only business school, really, the only business school in Greece which has all its courses and practices assessed by the QAA, the Quality Assurance Agency of the United Kingdom, through the Open University. As you know, we are also United States accredited. We have a United States accreditation from NISC, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. School of Business programs are continually updated. It doesn't happen very often, as you know, in other schools. Students and teachers work together toward the same goal of excellence. The presidents of the student academic societies now participate with voting rights in the school's program committee, representing the voices of their student communities. So we are a very democratic, open university. Students have chosen a critical theme for Business Week 2012, which is the learning organization. The subtitle is a question, a key to competitiveness. They are leaving it open for us to discover this week, but the slogan they have also chosen seems to suggest an answer: learn to make a difference. The question seems simple, but the answer is complex. Whenever people come together to accomplish something in a business, in an educational institution, or in an NGO, or in a parea, there is a potentiality to be a learning organization. How do we live up to this potential? Altogether, we need to think about this. First of all, this is my opinion, please don't forget that a learning organization doesn't only develop within, but that it should always take under consideration social context. How do we proceed with this implementation? This is a very difficult year for Greece. Greece, which is dealing with a crisis at every possible level. Very often we accuse our political leaders for this, and maybe in part we are excused. However, we don't need leadership only in politics. We, more than ever, need leadership in business. Where should we start from? Many commentators have noted that when the goal of a society is sustainable change, we all know that Greece needs this, business and education increasingly have more in common. Universities have a new role. our School of Business offers for many years to all its students all the support they need so that they contribute to development, to new strategies, not just to any change, but to the change which relies on ethical business leadership. Ethical business leadership. How can we further develop business leadership in Greece? We are not referring only to management, to control functions, to keeping things afloat, to using the budget as a tool to cut costs. These all sound to me very political. We need leaders who can listen, who can recognize a good idea no matter who says it or where it comes from, who don't calculate the personal costs, no way, who understand the need for transformation, who can imagine how to get there, who start moving in that direction, and who have the ability to move the organization with them. How do we move toward transformation? We know from experience and research that transformation starts when we share what we know. This is the key to a learning organization, and in Greece it's not always comfortable to practice this. Many times we are afraid of conflict, you know that. Or we are afraid that if we share what we know, we are giving away our treasure without getting anything back. Knowledge sharing isn't always easy because people not only think differently, but they act differently. A leader makes knowledge sharing not optional, makes knowledge sharing mandatory. Education changes culture. All recent generation in Greece has seen this. The leadership I'm describing here is the culture change which we need now. In our school, and we are very proud for this, we are trying to develop such leadership because business needs it and because Greece and Europe needs it. We want our students to prioritize business knowledge, to work in cross-disciplinary teams, to be open to the stimulation that comes through ideas and cultural differences, and to devote themselves to their own ongoing personal development. My grandmother, she was saying, it has been said that formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. She was not the only one quoting this. The DEREE Business Week is created by students in collaboration with the faculty, but it belongs to students. Let's not forget that it belongs to students. This is an important opportunity to listen, to understand, and to interpret. This is our 7th annual Business Week, if I'm not wrong, and this year, for the first time, students are participating on 2 panels together with our invited guests and members of the Business Week Faculty Steering Committee. This helps to demonstrate that we are all listeners and at the same time we are all contributors to the making of new and innovative ideas. I would like to thank the societies, all of them, very much so. Business Week appears on our calendar every day, every year, and it seems like an easy job. Well, it isn't an easy job. It's a professional job. We have 24 speakers this year, including the 2 panels on Tuesday and Thursday. Everyone who has accepted our invitation today is a leader who has proven his or her commitment to making a difference in our society. This week we are challenged to think more deeply and creatively about often unsettled issues which create new restrictions, new challenges, new opportunities, and we hope new visions in business. Very often, over the last years, business has been undermined in very many academic circles. This is the truth. But business has a lot to teach us. How to risk, how to solve crises, and how to work unbelievably hard when something matters to all of us. I'm referring to your teachers. I was watching students making decisions together in order to prepare this business week. And, you know, apart my concerns, because every night I read or watch the news like all of us, I felt that I was in a circle of security and optimism. These young people have fresh ideas, they like each other, and they like their work. And most of all, this is what I have discovered, at a time when many of us feel disappointed, they are acting with hope. Hope is a waking dream, according to Aristotle. I wish you all a very successful and stimulating business week. Thank you. The chairperson of the steering committee, will present our distinguished guest and speaker, President Daskalopoulos.
Good day to everyone. A warm welcome on behalf of the steering committee. I have the pleasure to present briefly the biographical notes of President Daskalopoulos. Dimitris Daskalopoulos is a business entrepreneur. He is the chairman of the board of the Hellenic Federation of Enterprises, SED. He is also a member of the board of directors of the DEREE-The group of companies. He has served as the chairman of the Federation of Greek Food Industries, as board member of the Athens Chamber of Industry and Commerce, as board member of the National Bank of Greece, and numerous other business associations and corporations. He has been active as member of the European Roundtable of Industrialists from 1998 to 2008, the President's Council for International Activities at Yale University, the Young Presidents Organization, and the Chief Executives Organization. As the principal owner, CEO and chairman, Dimitris Daskalopoulos oversaw since 1983 the transformation of a family dairy business into DEREE-The SA, Greece's largest food company with leading brands in dairy, bakery, frozen foods and restaurants, and 30,000 employees in 29 countries. He sold the business in 2007. He is today the chairman of Gamma Holding SA, a financial services and investment company. He is a collector of contemporary art, member of the board of trustees of the Guggenheim Foundation, and active in the TAI International Council and the Leadership Council of the New Museum. Dimitris Daskalopoulos holds a BA in Management Studies from the Athens School of Management and an MBA from the Kellogg Graduate School of Management. He is fluent in English and French. President Daskalopoulos, you may take the floor.
Good morning to all of you. I wish to thank the college and especially the organizers of the Business Forum for the kind invitation and the opportunity to be with you. Although I was hoping to cut my speech in half so we could have some time for discussion, I ended up probably having too much to say and taking up the whole time. I was asked to respond to the question of the theme of the learning organization. As you heard, I'm an MBA myself, and I was, of course, I found a lot of use for all the theories of the firms that I learned in the early 80s at business school, the learning organization, the network organization, the knowledge-based organization, the innovation organization, the open one, a myriad of theories, all very useful. But then I went into real business and I found out that an organization is a creative chaos in constant flux, and it's none of, or it is, I would say, everything of these theories, a bit of everything and not enough of anything. So I decided to speak instead on a subject that I think, as this is an opening speech, on a subject that is a concern for all of us these days. Competitiveness, what it is the main theme behind everything we see happening around us. And it's the main theme in our country, in Europe, around the world. So I want to try to tackle the issue of what is competitiveness, how we can get it, and what it means for our country as well. So we start a bit in an academic way. In years past, traditional wisdom dictated that we look upon countries as the preeminent competitive unit. I will not put you to sleep by going through the different explanations that were advanced as to what makes a country competitive. Suffice it to say that they range from the theory of absolute advantage in factor endowments of Adam Smith to the comparative advantage of David Ricardo, to Raymond Vernon's product cycle theory, as well as to theories about the importance of economies of scale, innovation, labor costs, trade, flows of capital, foreign exchange, management practices, and the list goes on. None of these explanations could withstand the passage of time, and none of these could withstand the test of real-world developments. For example, most of the world trade takes place between nations with broadly similar factor endowments. Small countries like Switzerland and nation cities like Singapore have succeeded, have rose to fame on the basis of their internationally competitive achievements. Unions, supposedly the bane of competitiveness, are very powerful in very competitive countries like Germany and Sweden. Japan has no resources, but it is competitive. Korea had no capital to start with. Italy has proved that small-sized firms can be internationally competitive. And to further complicate the analysis, what exactly is a competitive nation? A nation where every firm and every industry is competitive? One whose exchange rate makes its goods and services competitive in international markets? Is it a nation that shows a surplus in the external current account? Or one with a rising share of world exports? Is it a nation capable of creating jobs, or one able to keep labor costs under control? I believe that there is no single valid answer to identify the competitive from the uncompetitive countries. Not to mention that countries over time shift in and out of these categories, or that even the most competitive are constantly lamenting about their lack of competitiveness and are trying not to stay behind. So a more pertinent question is, why is it that firms based in a particular area, a state, a nation, a region, are able to create and sustain a competitive advantage in a particular field? To start with, there is a more clear answer to this question. It is because some nations or regions have understood that gains in world-class competitiveness require commitment and investment in a wide range of factors. All these factors that impact the ability of an economy to participate in world income distribution. These factors are education, ethics, organization, public administration, transparency, overall government efficiency, infrastructure, taxation, the rule of law, the state's relations with its citizens, corporate governance, to name but a few. Accordingly, some countries or regions have set out to willingly and constantly strengthen their institutions so as to provide them these factors in the most efficient and complete way. And firms will be attracted to these locations because they find the basis, the fertile ground to develop their own abilities. It is still, though, up to the firm to succeed. Success and sustainability depend on each firm's people, and their decisions. In his seminal work, The Competitiveness of Nations, Michael Porter makes the astute observation that it is not countries or even industries that are competitive. It is firms. The country is where the fulfillment of certain conditions, like we said before, enables firms to become competitive if they want to and if they are able to. I could not agree more. My own personal experience is one of creating a competitive company within a non-competitive country. And the firm is indeed the operative unit for competitiveness. And in order to understand what is happening in the real world, we must stop looking at the what of competitiveness, and we should focus on the why of competitiveness. And before I attempt to answer this, two observations about the world we have to act with as business people. First observation. Competitiveness, of course, is proving to be a more and more difficult game, as more disparate factors that come into play with increasing complexity and increasing interdependence, as the waves of technological change impact on firms and society, continuously altering the rules of the game. In today's modern world, the future is not an extrapolation of the past. No wonder Gary Hamel claims, with some hype it is true, that the future is now. In many sectors, the rules are waiting to be written. Competition for opportunity share is replacing competition for market share. With future profits, while future profits have started to depend largely on today's possession of requisite competencies. Product life cycles are getting shorter, development times are getting tighter, and customers expect almost instantaneous service, at the same time that the time frame for an investment and innovation may be 10 to 20 years. No one is safe from the unexpected, whatever their special abilities. No one is immune to worldwide competition, wherever they're based. On the other hand, the second observation is that globalization by itself has radically altered the operational conditions for the firms, because it decouples the firm from this factor endowment of the nation or of the area where it is. Meaning that this decoupling offers firms a relative equality in the ability to become competitive. Raw materials, components, machinery, services are now available globally on comparable economic terms. Technological advances have lowered the cost of transportation and have simultaneously given the firms the ability to largely circumvent the factor of scarcity. The factors of production have become mobile. Capital flows freely. Labor mobility is on the rise. Innovations spread quickly. Competitive companies have the liberty to move production lines from one location to another in search of raw materials, market share, or cheap labor. So within this reality, competitiveness for the firm has become, on the one hand, a multidimensional and extremely difficult game, but also on the other hand, a game that is played on an increasingly level playing field. In his book, The Lexus and the Olive Tree, Thomas Friedman compared the new morphology of competitiveness as a shift from sumo wrestling to running the 100 meters over and over again every day. And he added, in order to sustain competitiveness, a company must win this speed race every time. A few decades back, in a similar vein, Joseph Schumpeter had written that There is no such thing as equilibrium in competitiveness. This is why competitiveness is an everlasting challenge. So how does a firm meet this challenge in order to enhance its own competitiveness and longevity? My own answer is simple, maybe even simplistic, but that comes from an experience. Success and sustainability depend, I say again, on each firm's people and their decisions. It is the human factor in vision, leadership, and teamwork that makes a difference. Successful companies are the ones that are able to motivate and manage individual excellence and passion into a performing organization. Thriving firms are the ones able to create a culture that transcends the entire firm and encourages both individual and teamwork, promotes a common set of ethics, underscores the value of effort and commitment, and emphasizes the inherent ties of the business community with its own people and with the wider society. It is probably that simple. That is why it is so hard to achieve. Let me now turn to the case of Greece. In our country, we're living at the realization of the failure of this consumption-oriented model of economic growth that was financed by loans and subsidies. So it is obvious that we are in need right now of a reorientation of the economy to a growth process led by investment, innovation, and export. In other words, we are in a need to shift to an internationally competitive production base of goods and services. The two main prerequisites for this to come about is A, the shrinking of the dominant state and the diminution of its interference in the economy, and B, the creation of a business-friendly environment that is conducive to creativity and risk-taking and private initiative. Of course, the competitiveness of the Greek economy is not a technical issue only. It remains primarily an issue of mentality, and this is the big hurdle we are facing in our country. Because our own competitiveness in this country depends most of all on the modernization of the thoughts and processes that determine the structure, the qualitative aspects, the functioning of the Greek political system as well as of Greek society. In other words, it depends on the ability of this country to restructure itself in accordance with the standards of modernity adopted by the contemporary competitive world and of the Europe we are part of. The way that Greek society and the Greek political system interface with the business community is at the base of the problem. While, of course, individual business success is envied by society and everybody is trying to better their own economic situation, the contribution of the business community to the cause of wealth creation and social prosperity is not accepted. Politicians and the media look upon the business community as the imagined guilty party for all sorts of ills that fall on the country. And society and the political system do not recognize the contribution of the business world, and they do not consciously accept the fact that business activity is first, and that is its use for society. It's a means for the creation of wealth, and that it is then, and only then, that society acquires the means for the necessary social redistribution. So this stance reflects a deep-seated and short-sighted ideological deformation that amounts to left-wing conservatism. As a result, the entire national framework on which firms must necessarily base themselves is sadly deficient. To the degree that this form of conservatism remains dominant, conditions for the flourishing of business activity will remain adverse. Of course, despite this unfavorable reality, the private sector has managed in all of these past years to survive and to provide Greece with its one and only lever for real growth. That it has managed to do so in the face of such mentality and such adversity is proof of its resilience and its abilities, as well as of its prospects. Given a level playing field and freedom from state interference, it will succeed in pulling Greece into the ranks of modern European countries. The private sector, the real economy, is now for Greece the only game in town. And it is time to give our many able, knowledgeable, willing citizens the freedom and the impetus to dream, to dare, to invest, to succeed. Ladies and gentlemen, any economy is a complex mixture of order and disorder, equilibrating and disequilibrating tendencies, expansive thrusts, and contractive retreats. All are systemic properties of a unique social formation, and as such difficult, if not impossible, to predict. It was Keynes who wrote about the future that we simply do not know. We must be aware that we are dealing with a system that has an inherent instability because its energies are unevenly generated and its self-regulatory mechanisms are volatile. The world financial crisis that we are still living through is more than an apt case to the point. The possibilities of mismatches, overshoots and undershoots, aberrations, accidents, and political and social unrest are endless. It would take a theological conviction to believe in smooth growth and unchallenged survival. Yet the system has managed to survive, perhaps because its dynamism lies in its ability to self-generate change. And this ability is also its greatest weakness. In this, it is Schumpeter who has in all probability said the last word, as he perceives in this self-generating ability the erosion of values. Over the last quarter century, Greece has suffered exactly such an erosion of values. No wonder it has been unable to implement even the most obvious and necessary reforms. No wonder it has become a disgruntled society that risks losing even the last vestiges of social cohesion. And no wonder its international competitiveness is practically non-existent. In the end, without a firm set of values, all else is thin air. On this note, let me close with a dire warning. If, in this competitive struggle for survival, economic performance becomes an end in itself, instead of only a means to an end, then this struggle will also prove to be our undoing as a society of human beings. I thank you for being here early in the morning, for your attention. I wish a successful conclusion to your studies. I am confident that although it doesn't look very promising today for your own prospects, you will soon, or anyway sooner rather than later, find yourselves in an environment with many opportunities for creativity. I urge you to be optimistic and persevere. As in my basic premise about competitiveness, it is up to us, up to individuals, up to our vision and our passion to create innovation, excellence, competitiveness. Go for it. I believe in you. I expect a lot of you, and I think so does this society. Thank you.
Any questions?
To link the outside business world with the theory we teach in the classroom. My question leads from what you told us, that businesses have to be competitive. We know because managers are evaluated on profit or wealth of shareholders. My question is that education has to be competitive. Because I, as a professor, I have a responsibility to teach these students to go out there and to find a job and to be successful. If we take for granted that there's no crisis and that I want to keep my program competitive, now that I have you here as a businessman of the world out there, how would you see a student graduating as being competitive? What are those factors, like we talked about globalization, and those factors for a company which make a successful, competitive company? What do you see in an, if you can answer me, in a competitive education program so that our students, when they go out there, they can be successful?
As I said, I'm also an MBA, and I recall back in the days where I came out of school, especially coming in the early 80s to Greece that was not used to MBAs. Of course, I already had a job and went directly in it, didn't have to look for one, but I came with all these, the feeling of strength of my knowledge. And I think I do not recall having anything that I learned that I used directly as such in my business. And I think the value of this education is very important in developing a way of analytical thought and an ability to understand within the uncertainty and try to make decisions within this uncertainty. This is the most important factor. As I said, this world is complex, it's becoming more complex, and all we need in terms of education is the ability to understand more, but realize that even if we cannot understand everything, we have to make a decision and act. And then beyond that, I think there is something else about how each of us fares in this world that cannot be taught in a school, and it's part of ourselves. I think the driving force beyond that for success is personal passion and the need to succeed. Hungry and thirsty, I would say, more important than knowledge.
Questions?
Thank you very much for your wonderful speech today. Greek business coexists with Greek society and the Greek state. what are the sins of Greek businesses? In other words, what is the share of responsibility of Greek business for the mess we are in today? Is it guilty of short-sightedness also? Is it guilty of not looking beyond the borders of Greece enough? You know, what is your feeling about that? How does existing Greek businesses have to change?
Well, of course, in a big mess, no one, even the unborn, can say that they were not responsible for something, that they were not part of it. I think what's important is to go beyond these stereotypes. I say this because it usually very quickly comes up that business has dealt with this system on an equal basis, so it has the same blame for creating it. I would say, and they talk about this, the famous saying about the tango that takes two. And my answer is that in this tango, the gorilla was the state, which was basically holding business from the neck and turning it around. And I assure you that there is a lot of ability, I said, about an organization based on people and individual initiative. I believe very much in the ability of Greek people to get together, work together, dream and act, and I have seen a lot of that. And I assure you that business would be more than happy to get rid of this system of dependence on the state, of dealing with the state. Nobody has profited from that unless they absolutely had to. That is why what is happening now, I think, is the most important opportunity for us to change substantially, base ourselves on institutions, on a level playing field, on the rule of law applied equally to everybody, and that increases each of us, whether we're individuals or in a large organization, to succeed.